So last week the FPL game launched live for us all to start tinkering with our teams, and a bunch of us have got on board and picked our first drafts. That means a template has started with the most owned players becoming clear to us, and now we're going to look at the team that covers the most owned players and see if we should be considering those players for our Fantasy Premier League teams. So before we get into this video, please do hit that like button, subscribe and hit that notification bell for FPL, but also in the comments down below you can pause the video if you want to, try and guess who some of the most owned players are without going and looking on the Fantasy Premier League website. Anyway, let's get straight into the video. So, I'm not going to lie, I had my general conception of what this team would look like before I went to the website and built it. And to be honest, there are some players that haven't quite made the cut of the players that I've seen clearly on the Twitter template. However, this is the template on the whole game, the most owned players, and we're starting off with the goalkeepers. So in goal, most people look like they are going with Emiliano Martinez from Aston Villa. Of course, he was the top scoring goalkeeper last season in the game, so there's not much surprise there, although he has been put at 5.5 million, and for me, that's a little bit too rich for my blood. I personally can't see myself ever spending more than £5 million on a goalkeeper, and that £5 million goalkeeper better offer me a lot of point potential if I'm going to go above the 4.5 price bracket. Of course, the most popular options in the Twitter community are Sanchez from Brighton Hove Albion, Dubravka from Newcastle, and also Guaita from Crystal Palace, all at 4.5 million. For £1 million extra, maybe Martinez does offer a bit more security of save points as well as clean sheets, but at 5.5 million it's just a little bit too rich for my blood. And to be honest, the difference between goalkeeper points is never that massive anyway, season long. So I'm not going to jump aboard Martinez, but there are some defenders that I'm definitely interested in jumping on board with. One of them being Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, he's not the highest owned defender in the game, actually. That goes to Luke Shaw, which has also made it into this team. Luke Shaw is at 33.1%, whereas Trent is at 28.5%. I think both are absolutely great options alongside the likes of Digne as first starters in our Fantasy Premier League starting 11. What was interesting to see is the third highest owned defender wasn't Digne, though. It was Fofana at 4.5 million from Leicester City. A lot of people putting a lot of faith in that Leicester City defence, and of course Fofana was an integral part of that defence for parts of last season. Making up the numbers is Lamptey, who did have a great start to last season, however did get injured and then we didn't see him for the rest of the season, but he looked very promising at the beginning of the 2020-21 season. Some of the defenders we could have put in this side are of course Digne. Cresswell is also there at 5.5 million. They have 25.4 and 20.9% ownership, with the likes of Kufal, Chilwell, Robertson, Wan-Bissaka, Reece James, Matt Targett and Ben White all coming in above 10% owned. My strategy going into this game is most likely to go with the likes of Lamptey and Fofana because they are the 4.5 million defenders that are the most owned in the game. I will be going with Trent, and then I suppose it's a strategy of do I go with more £4.5 million defenders, the likes of Ben White potentially if he goes to Arsenal, or do I go with someone like Digne or Cresswell or Kufal, who we know can get some attacking returns. However, Shaw and Trent do offer a lot of attacking potential, which is why they are so highly owned. Trent, of course, having 77 key passes last season, 14 big chances created and getting 8 assists from an expected assist of 8.93. He also got 2 goals from 55 shots on goal, only 12 of them being on target and only 13 from inside the box. But we know Trent can bring in the points, having brought in 160 last season, and for him, that was a pretty bad season. Luke Shaw also had a resurgence last season. He managed to get 1 goal from 11 shots on goal, 6 on target, but he also had 72 key passes, 7 big chances created. From an expected assist of 5.56, he got 5 assists. So they're definitely 2 great options, and to be honest, I think Luke Shaw is probably £0.5 million underpriced, so I can understand why Luke Shaw is the highest owned defender in the game. We then move on to the midfield, and we've gone just so we can fit him in for a midfield free, and that is Salah and Fernandes, who I think you are all pretty confident would be in this side. But also Jack Grealish joins them. Jack Grealish, of course, being under transfer scrutiny at the moment because of his potential move to Manchester City. Now at 8 million, if he could nail down a place in Pep's starting 11, if that's even possible. I think Jack Grealish would be an absolutely great shout for your FPL sides, but that's the issue, nailing down a place. With them going after the Champions League and probably still going after any other cup that they're entered into, there's going to be rotation in such a strong squad. And Jack Grealish, like the likes of Riyad Mahrez and Phil Foden, could fall foul to rotation. So for me, I probably would only be really interested in Grealish if he stayed at Aston Villa and joined the likes of Buendia and Watkins in an attacking three. With such creativity at the disposal of Aston Villa, potentially they could get a lot of goals, and Jack Grealish would be a main player in that starting 11. Mohamed Salah, of course, is the most owned player in the game at 51.9% owned, and I think if you don't go with him and Bruno Fernandes at 42.2% owned, I think you run the risk of falling behind the pack if both start off really well. I'm not the person that likes to look at ownership too much throughout the season, but I think at the beginning, going without these two would be very brave. It would only pay off if they did absolutely nothing, and the players that you picked did very well. We've seen plenty of managers try to go against the crowd at the beginning of the season and fall way behind the pack, whereas potentially it's just safer to go against the pack later on in the season when you can make more informed decisions. Of course, play the game your own way, but this is just the way I see it. If you want a good season, potentially don't start off on the wrong foot. Mohamed Salah, of course, is the guy that has the most shots on goal every season pretty much, with 126 shots on goal last season, 52 on target, 98 from inside the box, and 33 big chances, with an expected goals at 21.76 and scoring 22. He also got 6 assists from that, from an expected assist at 10.78. And Bruno Fernandes, of course, also had plenty of shots on goal, 121 shots on goal in total, with 51 on target, 48 from inside the box, so not as high, of course, as Mohamed Salah's shots inside the box, and 20 big chances, getting 18 goals from expected goals of 17.64. However, of course, he got more assists with 14, with 20 big chances created, and expected assists at 13.41. As for Grealish, he played less minutes, of course, because of his injury, but he did manage 6 goals and 12 assists. That's only 2 less assists than Bruno Fernandes, which shows just how valuable he could be at 8 million. Before we move on with this video, do make sure to check out Fantasy Football Hub. Top link in the description down below. This is where I get all of my data from to make these videos, as well as read articles and a fixture ticker to help you with your Fantasy Premier League season and fantasy football in any of its other forms, including the likes of Fanteam, Sun's Dream Team, and Telegraph's and Sky's fantasy football games. So go check them out using the top link in the description down below, and let's move on to the forwards. So, getting to the forwards, I was expecting to see the likes of Ollie Watkins and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but also joining them is Tony from Brentford. Now, I don't know too much about Tony myself, and I personally wouldn't want to go for a striker from Brentford at the beginning of this season, purely because it's not like they dominated the Championship, and I prefer to watch a player like Tony play before I get on board. Yes, potentially I could have got on board Patrick Bamford earlier last season when he did have a really good start to the season, but I would say Leeds were a different kettle of fish purely because they dominated the Championship so much, and Bielsa has a certain style of play. You knew they were always going to attack. With Brentford, I'm not as confident, so I personally wouldn't bring Tony into my side, but Watkins and Dominic Calvert-Lewin are 2 great shouts for your starting 11, depending on what happens during the transfer window and as we reach the Game Week 1 deadline. Calvert-Lewin last season managed 16 goals and managed 6 assists, so for £8 million, that is a great price for him. However, we do have to wait and see who takes over at Everton and exactly how they set up to see if he's still such a great option. That's not the case with Ollie Watkins. We know what we're getting with him. Same manager, pretty similar setup. Only difference might be Jack Grealish not being there, but he got 14 goals and 9 assists. So those 2 are great options, but potentially Tony would be somewhere where I would look to go in a different direction. However, Tony is the most owned striker in the game at 38.5%. That is above Watkins at 34.9 29 and above Calvert-Lewin at 28.1. Harry Kane, who of course could potentially move to Manchester City, is currently owned by 24.9% of players, but I think a lot of you can't afford him if you've gone with the likes of Mohamed Salah and Bruno Fernandes. Iheanacho interestingly comes in just under 20% owned for Leicester and Bamford at 16.1% owned, and Cavani looks like a popular shout at 15.2%. And then finally we move to the bench, and to be honest, apart from potentially Dallas, who even though he has been moved to midfield could still be a decent shout to own for your sides, I think the rest of these are mainly bench fodder. Now Dallas is owned by 17.9%, and of course that is after his exploits last season, but remember then he was getting a lot more points for clean sheets and he'd also get more points for goals. So I don't think Dallas will of course have the similar type of point season in FPL that he did last year, unless Leeds are even more attacking this season than they were last and potentially Dallas gets more goals and more assists. Last season Dallas did manage 8 goals and 3 assists, which is not bad for a £5.5 million midfielder, so if he does increase those numbers he could of course be an absolute bargain. As far as the rest, Manquillo didn't really play much last season at 826 minutes played and doesn't really offer much at all, but is at 4 million. We're of course all waiting to see if Williams from Manchester United does go out on loan, because I think he would be a better option. And then we have Basuma on the bench as well, who did manage 1 goal but no assists. He is a very regular starter though, with 3,111 minutes, but doesn't really offer much going forward. So I've grayed out the players that I'm actually interested in out of the highly owned players, and to be honest, not too many of them are players I'm not considering at the moment. We of course aren't really considering Dallas at the moment because of his reclassification as a midfielder, and Manquillo didn't play enough minutes for me to really consider him unless pre-season shows something different is going to happen at Newcastle. Foster is fine as a £4 million goalkeeper, potentially could go with their starting goalkeeper as well, so you've got that base covered. Basuma is there at 4.5 million. I think he's fine as a midfield fodder pick. Tony, again, I would prefer to go with the likes of Iheanacho or someone more proven in the Premier League till I see Tony play. Grealish, I'm still waiting to see what happens with his move to Manchester City or if he stays at Aston Villa. And then of course Emiliano Martinez is a bit too rich for my blood. But as you can see, I would still consider 10 of these players to go in my starting 11 right now as things stand. So guys, that is it for this video. So in the comments down below, let me know how many of these you guessed, as long as you didn't cheat, and also how many of these could make it into your starting team for the Fantasy Premier League game. Also, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and hit that notification bell. It does help the channel out massively. And also make sure to come back tomorrow, same time, same place. We're going to try and at least get 5 videos out every week for you until the start of the season, Monday to Friday. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and come back here every time 11 o'clock in the morning for your update on FPL content. With that being said, I've been JNO, this has been FPL Today, and remember, it's all about the game.